All right, well, welcome back to the Unlearn with Us video series. Today, joining me is Lindsey Casselman, and I had the opportunity to meet up with Lindsey, which seems to be the way I meet up with most people now, is through social media. I guess that's the way of the world, but maybe it's the COVID thing too.
Yep.
But Lindsey has started up a Facebook group for people who have had to homeschool and never had anticipated that they would be homeschooling. So welcome, Lindsey.
Thanks.
It's been amazing to watch what you're doing on Facebook. You're so generous with your materials. But tell us all about you and what you do. And
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm a mom of two. My kids right now are 9 and 11. I went to teachers college at York, and I spent a couple years working in the public school system. And then I had my babies and ended up staying home. And they went to public school. My son did 4 years and my daughter did 2. And then we decided to homeschool, which we had on the back burner since they first started school. We had always sort of wanted to do it, and then come September we would chicken out and send them back to school again. So we just got to a point where we were like, let's just try it, let's do it. And we never look back. We're about to go into our 4th year now of homeschooling.
All right. Well, you know what? I see that that's a common thread on your Facebook page, where people are just saying, okay, we've decided finally, or actually there's been a lot of people who've been like, we've wanted to do this and finally, this is pushing us forward with it.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of people in your situation who never really had the courage to do it, and are moving forward.
Yeah.
So um, So you gave us a little bit about your education background related to going to teachers college and spending some time in the education system. I'm curious, as I'm speaking to people of many different ages, what your education experience was like. What was school like for you?
I liked school when I was small, like I think a lot of people, and then you sort of burn out on school, and most teens are not really enjoying school anymore by that age. I had a lot of problems with bullies in middle school, and high school. I had a blast in high school. I wouldn't say that I had a super educational experience. I find the pattern seems to be that kids teach each other that it is not cool to like learning. It's not cool to be smart and get good grades. And I spent high school purposely like dumbing down my grades to fit in better, is how I would describe it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Not that that's not what was happening, but that's a really interesting thing that you've pointed out there, in that it's not cool to be smart. It's not cool to do the grades. What do you think would make it cool to learn?
I don't know, but I mean, you think about the stereotypes of like the brain or the nerd or whatever, right? Like
Right.
if
Yeah.
you are into school and learning, then that's not cool. Right?
Yeah.
So and I mean I would love to see that change.
Yeah.
I think it's maybe getting a little bit better with our generation, or with our kids' generation, than with
Right.
us.
Yeah.
Um, but but you still see that a lot in schools, or I did as a teacher, like
Yeah.
the teasing and the bullying for the kids who are trying really hard and
Right.
doing a good job.
Yeah. Because I think of, maybe some of those kids who were potentially the bullies, they were learning elsewhere, right? And then they were enjoying it, whether that be I'm an artist or I am an athlete or and it was cool for them to excel in those things,
Hmm.
right? Um, so I think maybe that concept, like you're saying, we have these labels of of these different people. You know, you can go back to the Breakfast Club, right? You got your
Yeah.
brain, the what was it, the where were they
The
again?
jock.
Yes, the weirdo
Mhm,
and the, I don't know, the pretty
I
girl, the
forget.
popular girl or whatever. They
Yeah.
had specific names. I
Yep.
usually watched, I usually know this. Anyways, but how do we make learning not so stereotyped, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, and it's just, it doesn't matter who you are or what you like to learn. It's cool. Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you've obviously chosen, well, you were in the system, you were a
Yep.
teacher, you've chosen to homeschool. So my next few questions are about our current education system. So if you had to sort of look at it right now and say, you know, here are the good things, here are the things that maybe we miss, or um, these are the good things about our system.
The best thing about our system in Ontario that I see is our teachers. I have my Facebook is full of friends and colleagues who are teachers who are working in the public system, and I can see them, you know, through their Facebook. Their summer reading is, you know, professional development, and they're genuinely heartbroken during COVID to have to do virtual learning and to be missing their kids, and seeing that, you know, seeing them grow and develop and seeing them off at the end of the year. And I can just see that our teachers are for the most part, I mean, there's always bad apples, but our teachers are genuinely passionate about teaching.
Yeah,
And I think that the system is what leads to, you know, teachers who are burnt out or teachers who are disengaged or whatever, is, you know, from having their hands tied or having their hand forced in what they have to do or not do. Um, like, I think the system wears on them, but
right,
from my point of view, our teachers are the best thing about the public system.
for
we
sure.
we never left the public system because we ever had a problem with a teacher.
Right. Okay, so then on the flip side, you were making reference to, you know, some of the negatives. But what do you think are failing? How is our system failing our youth?
Well, there's there's a lot of things I find about school, and I don't know how as a society we would really fix them. Like, I think that school is too much, too long, too early. I think school acts too much as a daycare. You know, we're sending kids too young. My son was burnt out on school in the second grade. And what one of the things that really pushed us to homeschool was he was in second grade. They were doing a unit on other cultures of the world or something like that, and he had to write about a little sentence about education in some other culture, and he said, girls don't get to go to school. That was the fact. And he wrote beside it in brackets, lucky, with an exclamation mark. And it just, that really hit home to me that, you know, there's people in other parts of the world who walk miles, you know, have like things thrown at them, risk their life to try and get the education that our children are so privileged to have access to. And by 8 years old, he had lost that understanding that to learn is a gift, you know, and he's 8 years old and wishing he didn't have to go to school every day. And I think
Yeah,
that's very young to
yeah,
have that, you know. um, so that was one of the things that really motivated us to homeschool. That's not really what your question was.
that's okay. That's okay.
um, but yeah, like they start school too early, like too young. And that's where you get that, like, second grader has 4 years worth of burnout. um, I think the days are too long. I think they're away from the family unit too much, and I think they try to have teachers pack so much into a year. Like, just going, now that I'm writing curriculum, just going through all the expectations for every grade, and it's like there's a lot in here, you know, that they want the teachers to get covered in a
Yes,
year.
yes,
So
for sure.
I think all of that combined leads to a lot of the kids burnout and disengagement.
And so now that you've had your kids at home, what kind of a difference do you see?
Well, I mean, kids will always be kids, and they, no matter how many days in a row they have to do their household chores, they still complain. And no matter how many days in a row they have to do school at home, they still complain. So I don't want to paint homeschooling as this like rainbows and roses, you know, but they, like, school doesn't take as long.
Right.
It's so much faster. They get such a tailored whatever they need. You know, they need more on this subject, they need less on this subject. It's all perfectly tailored to their needs. And they have tons of free time to be kids, right? Play is the work of children, and they have tons of time to play. They get a lot of, you know, life learning. They go to the grocery store and the bank with me and stuff like that. So all of that, I think, contributes versus sitting in a classroom in a desk for 6 or more hours a day.
Yeah. You were talking about getting outside and play. I know, and I've done a lot of research on homeschooling in the last little while, just with sort of making my change and really looking at education. Do you get together with other families? Because I know that there's always that concern, oh, well, if your kid's homeschooled, then they're going to be a social outcast.
Yeah. Yes, they get together with other kids. I love the socialization question. I know that a lot of homeschoolers get annoyed with it because it's the most common question. What about socialization? But I love having the opportunity to answer that question for people. So I always answer it twofold. One is that my kids socialize so much. Sometimes we have to back off the socializing and get some more academics done. Through our local homeschool group, they do gymnastics, swimming lessons, soccer in the fall, skating in the winter, track in the spring. They do parties. You know, we have a not going back to school party every September.
I want to join that one this year.
Halloween, Christmas, Easter. You know, we have an end of year barbecue every June. And then a litany of field trips that you can choose from. We go to the theater, we go to museums.
So you said you belong to a homeschool group. Is that like in your area, or is that how does that work?
So that's a Kingston group.
Okay.
But for anyone homeschooling, like, the beauty of social media and Facebook is most areas have a Facebook group. And then I would assume it varies by area how active they are and how many people you have involved. But I've seen lots. Like, there's an Ottawa one, there's a Kitchener-Waterloo, there's a Barrie, there's several, you know, GTA ones. Like, so there's a lot more homeschoolers out there than I think people realize.
Yes, that again, I my eyes have been opened. I think because of being in the system, you have blinders on, and it's almost like you have this allegiance to public education, which I still wholeheartedly believe in public education and that it should be accessible for everybody. Not everybody has the opportunity to homeschool their children.
Absolutely.
So I definitely think that it's really, really important that we have it. But I also think it's really important for us to open our minds to other forms of education, because the public system is not the be all and end all. And there are a lot of faults within this major machine of a system. So
by understanding how other people do it, you bring what works for you back to your area and make improvements, right?
100%. I know, so much of the stuff that I'm doing, not that, and I was doing this before I kind of delved further into homeschooling, but I'm realizing that there is a lot of overlap with the way that I want to approach education with sort of the homeschooling philosophy, which I know can be very different. I'm learning about the spectrum of homeschooling, because
there's no one way to homeschool, right?
You've got your radical unschoolers to your you know, more
School
structured
at home.
homeschoolers, yes, and everything sort of in between, and it's really cool. And there's the forest schools and the I've Sudbury schools and democratic schools, and yeah, so it's really, really, really cool. So I started writing this blog 3 years ago, and the whole concept of the blog was for people to watch myself and my students really go through this unlearning process, which I think as a homeschooler, and I'm sure when you're talking to people on the Facebook page, sometimes you probably just have to say, okay, take a deep breath, and you need to reimagine what learning can look like,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I know for so many people, school is what we went through, right? And that's what you know.
Yep.
So if you were to look at something where people, or if society was to learn more about unlearning sort of what we know education is, what do you think is the biggest thing that they would have to unlearn?
Um, I think the socializing aspect for one. So I actually didn't finish, just realized that I didn't finish my thought. So when I talk to people about socialization, I said that I answer it twofold, and I did.
Yeah.
And the first one is that they do socialize a lot.
Yes.
The second one relating to this is
Yeah.
that the socializing at public school isn't necessarily a positive form of socializing. You know, everybody, that's the biggest thing with people who are thinking about homeschooling or like starting their research, looking into it, or just interested in what we do, is that everybody seems to have this idea that if you don't go to public school, you won't learn how to socialize. And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is that putting your kid in a group, you know, based not on interest but on age, in a culture where it's very uncool to socialize with anyone younger than you, so they're not going to be playing with kids who are older or younger than them. They're confined to this one small cohort, um, and that being with peers and that peer influence on their social skills is necessarily positive for them, right? The definition of socialization is to learn what's an appropriate way to behave in the society in which you live, and who is better equipped to teach that to children. Mature adults who have been through life and love and care about this child, or other 7-year-olds, you
Right.
know, who are just as out to lunch as your 7-year-old is, you know.
Yeah.
And they, like, the school culture tells kids that parents are the enemy, teachers are the enemy, you know, adults like keep things from them, try to get away with things.
Yeah.
If you know, are really close to your parents or a teacher that you really like, that's probably not cool. Um, so that sort of influence, and the fact that they're with these kids all day, 5 days a week, um, you know, you can't blame kids for doing whatever it takes to fit in,
Right.
because that's their whole world. You know, they're with their parents for a couple hours in the evening, they're with their friends all day. And, you know, if that's the culture they're inundated with. So you can't blame them for becoming a part of it. They're immersed in it. And then they're learning their social cues, how to solve problems, how to make friends, what makes a good friend, or when they're older, a good partner. They're learning all of that from people who are the same age and their same skill level, rather
Right.
than learning it from mature adults.
Right.
And I think that's a big part of the socializing factor, is hopefully my kids are going to be well socialized, you know.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of opportunity for debriefing and discussing when they have conflicts in social situations and stuff like that, that they wouldn't get to do if they were still at school for the rest of the day,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, if you could change one thing in education, what would it be?
um if I could like wave a magic wand, it would be the whole culture of school. But I think that it's that's way too big a a request. If I could change something more realistic, I think I would make shorter days, fewer days, and have them start school closer to 7 or 8 rather
Right.
than 3 and 4.
And not that I've done any research on this recently, but I feel like I've come across stuff is it in Finland, or are there other places in the world that do have shorter days and start later? I feel like Finland does, or somewhere
Yeah,
in
I
Scandinavia.
don't know. Yeah, I don't know what what countries it is, but
Yeah,
there are other countries that have been experimenting with different schedules, and a lot of places kids don't go to school as early. Even other provinces from
right.
Ontario, they don't
Yeah,
start school as young as they do here.
yeah,
I did an LTO in kindergarten and in the fall one year, and
right.
there was a whole bunch of them that were 3. They told me when they booked me, they said it's a very young class. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they're like, some of them are still pull-ups. Like and I know from a friend who's a pediatrician that there is nothing wrong with a child that isn't potty trained when they're 4 or 5. Why are they at school all day long?
right,
Like, and that's not the teacher's job either,
right.
to be changing diapers. They're
Yes.
not they're not trained for that.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. All right. So you have well, not that you've made the switch, you've been doing this for a while, but you started up this new Facebook page. When did you do that?
Shortly after COVID, I am in a lot of the homeschooling parents type of groups,
Yep.
and they were just flooded with new parents as soon as school shut down and everybody was doing their virtual learning or whatever, wanting help. And I noticed that a lot of the homeschool parents were maybe a little bit less than welcoming and supportive to the new people. And
Right.
I appreciate their frustrations. A lot of people come on and ask the exact same questions without checking for answers already. But my heart just went out to those new parents who, were in a global crisis. So their stress level is high. I don't care who you are, your stress level has to be high.
Yeah.
And now their kids are home and they're trying to work from home. And so I started the group, COVID Homeschoolers, for anyone who is new. I mean, you don't have to be homeschooling because of COVID, but anyone who's new, anyone who wants to or is thinking they're only going to homeschool then this one next year, or of course any like seasoned homeschoolers who want to join and mentor. But it's sort of, if you join to mentor, then obviously you're willing to answer questions and help people.
And have
Um,
you got quite a few mentors?
yeah, we've had quite a few people join who want to help and share what they know. And the group has just exploded. There's a lot of people out there
Yeah.
who are planning to homeschool next year.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I started posting up unit plans that I had made in the past, and there's jot form and that sort of thing. Not something you could just print off and use, but to say to parents, like, you can do this, like this is what it can look like. Obviously our way is just one way, but and just some little things help them a lot. Summarizing like what the science topics are for each grade under the Ontario guidelines and stuff like that seemed really appreciated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I've seen all kinds of feeds there with you popping in, and I mean, you've shared so much stuff, and as a result you've been hired to help out with
yeah, so I was approached through the Facebook group by Schoolio, and they're a new company wanting to offer curriculum for homeschoolers. There's a need for Canadian-based and Ontario guideline-based curriculum and secular curriculum. So that's what we're doing. I'm writing the um, following the Ontario guidelines and putting everything into lessons. We want it to be a really straightforward, easy to follow, complete beginner parent who's terrified and doesn't know what they're doing. You can look at this and think, I can do this. Like, I can follow this. I can teach this to my kids.
awesome.
So that's what I'm going for as I write, is like
Yeah.
sticking to the curriculum. If you want to send your kids back next year, they'll be on track.
Yep.
They won't have missed any topics, and something that you can do. You can do it.
And if people, when does that launch?
As fast as I can write. So I started with grade 4. Only because my daughter's in grade 4 next year. So I had
Right.
already started writing grade 4 for her. So I started with grade 4. I just finished grade 4. I'm working on 1, 2, and 3 right now. And yeah, they're hiring more, and we're trying to get it out the door as fast as we can. And hopefully get like, I'd like to get some content for every grade ready for
Yeah.
September, and then I can just keep writing into the fall, obviously. But
That's
I love it. That's like my thing, is writing curriculum. I always
awesome.
said in teachers college, like I liked preparing the material more than delivering the material.
Right.
I'm a
Well, that's
bit of a book nerd in that sense, but I love to write, and so this is just like my dream job.
awesome. Well, if people wanted to find you, to, and maybe you don't want any more people to find you, but if they were looking for resources or and are thinking of homeschooling this year, how can they get in touch?
Our Facebook group is called COVID Homeschooling Ontario. So you should be able to just do a search and find that. And if people are interested in buying homeschool curriculum, it's schoolio.io. So schoolio is how I remember it.
Schoolio, that's awesome.
And that's where you can buy your
Awesome.
curriculum.
Well, think about how like far, I don't know how often you write your curriculum for your own children, but are you going to be further ahead now that you've done this?
Well, my kids are going to be in grade 4 and grade 6. So
Okay.
if I write up to grade 8, I'll be 2 years ahead
Yeah.
on my oldest, but
Yeah.
should have started this in like grade 1. Uh,
Yes.
but no, it'll be good. I mean, I'm doing it anyways. And I've been doing the new math that the government
Okay.
just released. So
Yep.
our curriculum's going to have the new math, which has been really fun. I really like the
Yes.
changes that they made.
Yeah.
So, and it's been a fun challenge because there's not a lot of resources out there for it yet.
Yeah. Well, you might be getting hit up by teachers in the public education system for some of that if they
Yeah.
have to roll that out and deal with COVID.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, we are selling by unit as well. So you can buy like just math if
yeah.
that's your sticking point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Oh,
I'm
absolutely.
sure
Thanks for having me.
there are going to be so many people who are going to want to hear about homeschooling. I am sure.
I'm excited. Our community is growing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Quickly.
Yeah.
All right.